Well, I want to say hello, good morning to our listeners from around the world. And I want to welcome you to another edition of This Morning with Soulivity, broadcasting from our studio right here in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital here in the United States, and on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I'm so glad that you're here with us. I'm joined today by my beautiful friends and co-hosts, Dr. Chanel DeGuzman and Sheila Applegate. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, all.
Oh man, we're almost at the end of the week and a lot going on. How has your week been so far? How about you first, Sheila? How's your week been so far?
You know what? I would say a blur. I feel like lately, yeah, time is so wobbly these days. I'm always surprised at what day and time it is, no matter what I'm doing.
What about you, Chanel?
It's been busy, but we have close to 80-degree weather here in Michigan. So
We do too. It's crazy.
yeah, I was in the state capitol in Lansing, and so I had on a sleeveless dress. I'm like amazed. So yeah, things are just busy, but it's all good. Always all good.
There is something about that sunshine and warmth, y'all, after a
It's
long winter.
It makes I mean, you just feel like you're just, floating on the ocean almost.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely.
What about you?
It's been good. It's been good, and it's been busy as normal, as you both know.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of stuff happening, and I would say most of it, my human mind would say is good. Other parts of me were like, yeah, that other part I don't like, but um and and it gets better. It gets better every day. And so
That's
I'm very, very grateful for that.
good.
Listen, we've got a fantastic hot topic that we're going to be talking about, the energetic change and the wealth gap. But before we get started with that, I just want to remind our audience that, listen, you are a part of this conversation. This is interactive. And so we want your questions, your comments, your thoughts. Just post them directly to our chat here on Facebook or YouTube. And we will do shout outs to you. We want to know where you're listening from, as well as anything that's on your mind in regards to our hot topic today. Remember, these are real conversations that empower. And, to have that, there has to be a two-way kind of thing going on. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, again, I was talking to you both about this concept of energetic change and the wealth gap. And so I want to kind of start and frame this by reading something from the Stanford News, about a correlation between civil unrest and wealth inequality. Um, it reads this: What price do we pay for civilization? For Professor Walter Scheil, a professor of history and classics at Stanford, civilization has come at a cost of glaring economic inequality since the Stone Age. The sole exception in his account is widespread violence, wars, pandemics, civil unrest. Only violent shocks like these have substantially reduced inequality over the millennia. It is almost universally true that violence has been necessary to ensure the redistribution of wealth at any point in time. Now, surveying long stretches of human history, Scheidel says that the big equalizing moments in history may not have always had the same cause, but they shared one common root: massive and violent disruptions of the established order. Now, he goes on and says a peaceful remedy to economic inequality may start with what he calls an understanding of historical context, because simply electing the right politicians who promise everything will be okay is a short term view. For the longer term, he says, I am not advocating war, but repeating the same old ideas ignores the lessons of history. Something truly innovative and original may have to happen in order to create lasting change. So, what do you guys think about this? I'll go to you first, Dr. Chanel.
Well, that was a lot. Um,
Yeah.
I would say I definitely agree with, um, this notion of the distribution of wealth. Um, well, the fact that it hasn't been redistributed, right? I mean, and I know we're gonna be talking about the wealth gap,
Mhm.
but it appears that, you know, the gap between the different races based on where we've come from. I mean,
Mhm.
I guess I don't understand the notion of the war. I mean, I was actually happened to watch the Woman King this weekend,
Mhm.
first time,
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
and, just the notion that in order to become wealthy, people used human capital, for example.
Yes, yes.
And then, they took property and land. I mean, those are the kind of things that have been with us from the beginning, and I don't know that war necessarily, you know, helped to alleviate that, right? Because we see the remnants of it continue today.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm still getting my head around the article. That article is pretty heavy, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Right.
but yeah, I guess those are my initial thoughts.
Mhm. What about you, Sheila?
So I actually got kind of excited about the idea of this only because we have had war. It's humanity, and we really even in our stories, like
Mhm.
movies, television, books, we have that sort of um, presence with it that we don't know another way. And so to get to that idea that it is a redistribution of wealth, as and I agree that that's not what we always see. It's not a healthy one. It's not a good one. It's not working, or we wouldn't be here, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But to understand that that's what it is, and to see kind of the upheaval that is happening around the world, and to know that that is the people who are suppressed, where it is the wealth gap, working to adjust itself, um, makes a lot of sense to me. And I agree with the author that we want to find another way. And I do think that innovation has also made those changes throughout time. You know, in a
Mhm.
we're not there. Obviously, we're not there, but it's what we've used in the past. And I couldn't help but think, and this is a whole other topic we could talk about on the other day. But when you read that, I was like, oh, because we know AI is really close, and that
Yeah.
is a huge shift in our
Yeah.
world. And so there was this little bit of like, ooh, we might be getting close to a huge change. And that's how I felt about it all.
You know, totally understand both of your positions, and I think I share a little bit of both of what you both were saying. Because when I first read it, I my first take from it was something like you, Dr. Chanel, like, wait a minute, this isn't, war hasn't really changed, a lot. But then I started to think about it in a more broader context, and I think that's what Professor Scheidel was more getting at,
Mhm,
where it, you know, um, yes, sometimes war has changed, like what we would define as war, like World War II, right? World War II happened, and then from that, the middle class was born through, you know, the GI Bill and other things. Now, doesn't mean everybody got
Right.
that, because, you know, people of color didn't get any of that money or any of that redistribution. But there was a massive shift, right? And then if you go even further back in history, when you think about like the French Revolution, where the French Revolution was about wealth, right? Where less than 100,000 people out of 14 million own 99% of everything, right?
mhm,
And so there was that. And then even in most recent history, the marches on Wall Street and other things that were happening where, and even latest with the pandemic. So I get where he's coming from in terms of that, um, the current method that people use to promote change is anger and violence and outrage, which is understandable over a period of time. And I think the question that we're all asking ourselves now, and why I read that last piece around um, his thesis for the future, which is, well, if we've been using those specific methods to affect change and we're still not getting the change that we want, maybe we ought to rethink
Mhm.
our method of how we change this.
Maybe.
Maybe, right?
Yeah.
And right? And so that's in part what we're going to be exploring today, everyone. And I'm included in this. I mean, yes, I've got some things that I'm going to be sharing and that kind of thing, but I'm as interested in seeing what all of you have to think about this as well. So, um listen, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to dive in a little deeper into this subject and make it a little bit more personal, because there's some interesting information that has come from the UK in recent years about how this isn't just something that is a macro thing, that all of us, including the wealthy, are affected by the wealth gap. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about energetic change and the wealth gap on This Morning with Soulivity. We'll be right back. Hey there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoy the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life. Hello, welcome back to This Morning with Soulivity. We are talking about energetic change and the wealth gap today from a few different perspectives. And as I said before in the last segment, there is a fascinating study that was done out of the UK around how economic inequality infects real biological harm. And it reads, Western cultures have long cherished the notion that all people are created equal. But in the real world, our lives are not balanced with equal opportunities and resources. Now, one of the consequences of growing poor is worsening health. And the reasons are not as obvious as you may think. Yes, lower social economic status, or SES, means less access to healthcare and living in more disease-prone neighborhoods. And yes, As the SES ladder's lower rungs have become more populated, the number of people with medical problems has climbed. Now, this is not merely an issue of poor health for the poor and some versions of better health for everyone else. Starting from Elon Musk at the top, every step down the ladder is associated with worse health.
Mhm.
So the idea is that this wealth gap that we have just doesn't affect poor people and people who have lower SES, as this study was telling us about, that everyone along the wealth ladder is affected by it in some shape or form. Now, yes, there is an unequal distribution of that, but it just means that, listen, the wealth gap is bad for everybody, basically, right?
Mhm.
Except for the people way, 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 way at the top. And even they are affected by it in some shape or form. So, what do you guys think about that?
It makes perfect sense to me. And it's so true because if we just stick with health and we see this hierarchy, um, and I love Cast: The Origins of Our Discontent,
Yeah,
by
yeah.
Isabel Wilkerson, because we look at it as a caste, because I think that that's important too, because the distribution here in the United States does keep the people of color at the lowest, and that's essential that we need to shift that. What it does is no matter what your economic status is, everybody is trying to stay above the one below them.
Right,
And
right.
so instead of trying to see us as a collective or move up, I mean, people are trying to move up, but as far as getting everyone to this place. So we could have universal health care if we weren't so concerned about holding our place in that ladder.
Mm,
So people vote against themselves. People will accept things because they're in this ladder and they're believing it, that they have to step on the people, of lower economic status as they move up. And so we're constantly slowing the system down and putting up with things that we shouldn't put up with.
right, right. What are you thinking, Dr. Chanel?
Yeah, Sheila, when you said the word collective, that's what I was thinking. Collectively, we're all essentially one, right? We're all
Right.
out of this one universal mind. However, personally, Brian, you said, we would maybe make this a little bit more personal. Personally, I feel that like, for example, myself, I'm just, a dog hard. I don't know if that's the right word, but I am a really hard nose about my health and my wellness. Like,
Mhm,
it's,
mhm,
it's not, it's not a question. And so in some ways, when you think about the individualistic versus the collectivism,
mhm,
Mhm.
there's a wave between the two, right? There's a
mhm.
gap between the two.
Mhm.
Right,
And
right.
while
Yep.
I
Yep.
know the collective is super important and we're all interdependent, so what happens to one, it does trickle down or trickle up.
Mhm,
Personally, um, I'm very committed to my health, and I want to be committed to the health of those who don't have the same,
mhm,
either mindset or determination or resources or access to
mhm,
be their most healthy. Because when people aren't healthy, then they can't, they don't eat well. So then, that continues the cycle of, you know, being unhealthy, poverty, being able to get out and obtain resources and access to things that you really want, like, jobs, education. I mean, it's all interconnected.
mhm,
And
Mhm.
so I do find myself being in a situation where I do feel privileged, because it is privilege, right, Brian?
right, right,
Of
right.
being healthy, being committed to my
Mhm.
health, that of my family, but also wanting that for, people who don't have that. So, I'm very interested in girls. So girls and their health is one of my platforms, right?
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
So super committed to that. So yeah, just finding out how do we balance ourselves between our individual, responsibility and mindset. And then that notion of our collectivism of, if we all don't go up, we all go up together, or we kind of stay stagnant, right? We
Right.
can't all
Yeah.
rise unless all of us rise.
I I love you both. I love the fact that you both are talking about a blend. Like, I'm looking at this as two very important, distinct but connected ideas, right?
Mhm.
Where Dr. Chanel, you're talking about what you embody as values, right?
Mhm.
The value set that you hold for yourself, but then that value set also drives you toward the things that you are supporting out in the world. And part of that is other people feeling and having the access to the same type of outcomes that you get from what your value set is telling you,
Right.
right? And so, when I read this article about, and again, these are studies you don't hear about, right? You
No.
don't hear
Mhm.
about these
Right.
things, right? You don't hear
Mhm.
that. Listen, there is actually scientific evidence that when we connect the individual and the collective together, and that there's a certain, quote unquote, I dare say, morality around how we're thinking about, in this case, wealth, and how it's affecting all these different things in our lives, that that we can affect real positive change and long lasting change, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm glad we're having this conversation. I'm glad that the both of you are providing us, well, I'll put myself in there too a little bit, around just having an initial discussion about that there is something about, and I look at energetic change as connected to our values. So I just want to put that
Mhm.
Mm.
put that out there again,
Mhm.
that there is something important about each of us taking a moment, looking at what we're embodying, and asking the question, is that really how I want to live my life?
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Even if you're in struggle a little bit, right?
Right.
Or you're in
Yep.
struggle a lot, that nobody can rob you of some of the choices that you can make for yourself. I mean, one great man that was Nelson Mandela. I mean, he was in jail for 25 years, and he embodied this freedom that no one
Mhm.
could take away from him, because he knew in his heart that he was wrongfully imprisoned. So
Mhm.
he shifted. And so I look at people like that. Listen, we're going to take another break here, because I know this is a deep subject and I want to get Sheila and Dr. Chanel's thoughts on a lot of things. We're going to shift into how can we get empowered from this? What can we take from just these studies and that kind of thing, and what you both were talking about, and make a shift into more positive outcomes. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with more of This Morning with Soulivity, talking about energetic change and the wealth gap. We'll be right back in about 2 minutes.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
Are you ready to take that first step towards true, unwavering inner happiness? Are you like thousands of people who have everything they need, not want, but need, and still can't seem to find happiness and fulfillment in their lives? If so, the Steps to Happiness show is for you. On my show, you will learn about the principles and practices that lead to true inner happiness. Because guess what? It isn't found in our external environment, but within ourselves instead. Together with my guests, we will explore the latest physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being practices. And together, we'll advise you on the actionable steps you can take towards a happier, more fulfilled, authentic life. So I invite you to join me each week on Soulivity TV on the Steps to Happiness show with me, Teresa Greco.
Hello there. We're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. I'm joined by my beautiful host, Sheila Applegate, and Dr. Chanel DeGuzman. We are talking about energetic change and the wealth gap. Sheila, you just pulled up an important statistic that I would like you to share as we begin this next segment.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing, but not really if you look at how our lives are going. But
Right.
at the end of 2022, the top 10% of earners in the United States held 68.2% of total wealth.
Wow. And Dr. Chanel, you have another statistic.
Yes. So Sheila, that is quite telling. In like manner, the Duke University talks about the wealth gap, and as one example between African American and Caucasian, African Americans' net worth is 1,500. That's 1,500 versus Caucasians 174,000. I mean, that separation is so wide.
Right.
And I don't know that we
Right.
always talk about net worth, but that is an indication of the wealth gap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know, I mean, maybe I mean, we talked about the wealth gap on another show, but
Mhm.
you know, there are historic contexts to that. There are political contexts to that. We would love to get into all of that, but we're not going to do that in this specific show. We're talking about maybe in another one. But you know, things like that wealth gap in the United States can be directly attributed to things like the GI Bill, where people of color were cut out of it, other social programs that involved housing and all that people of color were cut out of. And so this all relates to this value set that I was talking about before, in my opinion, right?
Mhm.
Where individually, and that goes up to the collective around this, what values do we hold about ourselves and each other? And there seems to be in more capitalistic societies that the individual kind of wins out, and that there's this, well, we got to compete against each other,
Right.
when at the same time we have collective outcomes that we want, right? Like, you don't want, even if you're wealthy, I don't think you want to live in a country where everybody is prone to disease, right? That could be harmful for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. I'm going to read this one piece from the Chopra Center. It's about unlocking the secret energy of money. But I thought I just wanted to get both of your thoughts about it. And it reads, once upon a time, a financial tale was woven for you. Its plot was carefully crafted from family experiences, societal influences, and cultural patterns. Even though the money story of your youth may not be representative of your present values, it has likely guided your entire financial life. Fortunately, you are not bound by the narrative of your past. What say you all?
Well, what comes to my mind is some of this is unconscious. It's unconscious patterning, following a pattern, like the article says, established by your family, your culture. What you maybe didn't have, you didn't know that, like a lot of poor people growing up didn't realize that they were poor because of the other values of love and family
Right.
and connectedness.
Right.
But in actuality, I know I grew up poor.
Mhm.
I grew up
Mhm.
in Ann Arbor in what we call the projects. So
Mm.
I didn't realize it at the time that I lived in the projects, but yeah, that's how I grew up. But fortunately, I think through my mentorship and through my education, I learned to, I guess, break that cycle. But I think it goes back to what you also said, Brian, about the value set in what's central and important to you. And I just want to leap here and just say, I think some of it is because we don't have these intrinsic values, of that inner peace, that inner calm, that inner joy, that we're looking outside of ourselves. Because I also know, while I shared that statistic about the gap, I know that we also fabricate our lives too to make us feel
Mm.
better.
Hello.
And that contributes to the widening of the wealth gap, because we spend our money not necessarily on investments. For example, we spend our money on external things that make us feel good, whether that's a big car, or, a big house, or,
Right.
the gold that you see people still wearing today, right? The big gold. So I also just wanted to throw that fabricated life out that may not
Mm.
fit well with established internal values,
Right.
because we weren't taught those. So
Right.
we gravitate to things that make us feel good. And a lot of those things happen to be external, which costs money, which widens the wealth gap.
Absolutely. Sheila, what about you?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dr. Chanel. I agree with everything that you said. I definitely believe that our belief systems affect us, and that being in alignment and having a healthy relationship with money and finances is essential. And I do teach that energetic connection to abundance and money. So I have things to say, but I'll say, but I'll just start with one of the things. I think it is about your family and your culture. It's the general society, and a lot of times we don't even realize the beliefs that we have and that we need to upgrade. Because that is
Yeah.
one of the tools I do, is to look at your beliefs and find them, and then what would you like to upgrade those beliefs to? And it's a process of kind of adjusting them to something that's going to be more supportive to begin with. But money doesn't grow on trees is like one of the things that people always have said around the world, right? Or
Mhm.
at least in our country. And so um, things that simple, like money doesn't grow on trees, it literally does. It's
Right,
paper.
right.
It's it is made of wood and cotton, and then the coins are made of rocks, right? So we need to see the ridiculousness of the power that's been put into the system, so that
Mhm.
we can understand that the universe can always provide for us, and the power that is used by these sayings,
Right.
that are infused in our life, that we just take for granted and don't even question because they're so normalized.
Well, I love that. And that kind of leads us into our next segment, but we're going to take a very, very quick break so we can talk a little bit more about, how do we make this shift using kind of like what both of you have been talking about in our lives and move into maybe personally a better space about how we feel about our financial system so we can actually attract into our lives some change. So we're going to take a very quick break and we'll be back with more of This Morning.
6 years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose, so they could become the best version of themselves, to battle fear and ignorance, and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit Soulivity.com now.
Told you that was going to be quick. We're
That was
back with
quick.
more of we're back with more of this morning with Soulivity, and we're talking about energetic change and the wealth gap. And we're making this turn now toward, well, what do we do? What can we do individually that can maybe shift us out of some patterns and value sets that are no longer serving us. And again, going back to this article from the Chopra Center on unlocking the secret energy of money, they talk about these 4 steps that I think even I'm going to start practicing on more of a regular basis around shifting out of this. And they say replacing antiquated fears with fresh inspirational thoughts will change your relationship with money and the way it manifests in your life. And so step 1 is noticing your internal dialogue. Woo. And they say we talk to ourselves all day long. Author Michael Singer calls this mental chatter our internal roommate. Most of the time, we let our roommate babble without paying much attention to what it's saying. So the first step is rewriting your money story and to become conscious of what your inner roommate is telling you about money. Wow. I had, I know this, but I never really thought about it that much about money and finances and that kind of thing. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we're on the go, Brian, like
Yeah.
nonstop,
Stop.
right? Nonstop. And then we have all this stimulus that comes into us, from the TV, from media, from our surroundings. And honestly, the last thing that I think a lot of us are doing, at least that's why we're talking about it, right, is to stop and listen to what that internal dialogue is telling us. I think in the article it says, you should be able to basically tell yourself you can afford the things that you want. It is a decision and it's a shift. But I don't think we stop long enough to even hear, like you said, that internal chatter is there and it's going on. But I think we're kind of numb to it. I think we just accept it as part of our, we've normalized it so much that we don't separate it out to really, because I think that we'll be talking about challenging it next.
Yeah.
We don't tease it apart enough. It just comes along with us for the ride and it kind of dominates because we're not challenging it. We're not interrupting it enough. And I think that's because we're on the go all the time, doing everything else and being, having all this external stimulus.
Absolutely. Sheila, I want to get your take on this on step 2, which is challenging habitual thought patterns, right? We just talked about these
Right.
values and all this kind of stuff that we learned. And it says rewriting your story means discarding old beliefs that no longer reflect your current values. And it says after you have written down your reoccurring financial thoughts, it is time to see what ones align with your vision you hold for your future. Wow.
Yeah, so that is really important. And when you're going through that list to make for yourself, when we say put your beliefs down or your thoughts about it, make sure you put the ones you don't think you believe. If they come into
Right?
your head, they're there, right? And you may have disregarded it in a part of your brain, but it's still influencing you. And then you want to go to what do you want to believe? Well, there's another step in between that. Sorry. Then you have to see how that belief has supported you
Yeah.
to this point, because you wouldn't have kept it if it didn't support you in some way. So this is being really honest with yourself and not just what you want to think, but what you're thinking.
Right.
And then you take the next step of what do you want to believe instead?
Right.
And you write that or make that a point. But in doing that, if you don't feel that in your body, if it's like it's something you want to believe, but you can tell you're not in resonance,
Yeah.
you just adjust it a little bit to, I want to believe this, or I will believe this,
Right.
or pick something one step before that, knowing that you're going to go to that next step when you can.
Yeah, I love that, Sheila. I mean, you're kind of guiding us through And this article, by the way, everyone, is in our chat. Please go and read it fully and go through the steps. I'll be going through the steps with you because I love this, where we start by, again, noticing what our dialogue is. We challenge those habitual thought patterns, and then we generate new thoughts, right, about them
Mhm.
in terms of, and these step processes in this article.
Hmm.
But I love the last step, which goes to, Sheila, what you're talking about, and Dr. Chanel would love to get your take on this. And that is creating these positive affirmations that you use on a daily basis, a consistent basis, to anchor that feeling within your body and start to change what your habitual thoughts may be. Those get replaced with new ones, right?
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, I think after, and I know this is part of Sheila's process, and I'm not sure exactly the steps, but I know part of it is being able to release. The article talks about releasing stagnant energy.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So I think,
Yeah.
our thoughts generate the energy that we suppress or we hold in our bodies. We've got to get rid of that. And that's through that, realigning, our beliefs and challenging our beliefs and our thoughts. And I think the affirmations, I think, do work. Like this one that I picked up just today from the article, I am secure. I mean, I love that. And it's repetition, right? And not only just saying it on a regular basis because it generates the notion in your mind and your consciousness, but also what Sheila's saying is that feeling. Hopefully you're going to start embodying the feeling
Mm-hmm.
through that repetition of not only saying it, but you're hearing yourself say it, just like that other chatter we talked about. As
Mm-hmm.
you verbalize it, it starts to get into your subconscious and you do start to embody what you are saying and repeating and now believing and hopefully now feeling, which then starts to create a different outward picture.
Right. Right. I mean, again, I love the fact that we're talking about this today because, and I want to be clear with those of you who may be going through financial struggle right now. The purpose and the intent behind today and talking about this is not to shame, not to blame, not to minimize anyone's financial situation. The purpose is to let you know that as you're going through those specific challenges, if you're in those challenges, a way through them
Mhm.
that is supportive, loving, and that can create some more joy and peace around wherever you are, right? Because I think, Dr. Chanel, what you said earlier is so important. I didn't grow up with money either, right?
Mhm.
And there were times in my life where that went down before it came up.
Mhm.
And one thing that got me through was, the things that you said, relying upon certain values and certain things that were positive, practical, and progressive to keep me anchored in the pattern, in the feeling state of life is meant to be good. Life is
Mhm.
good, right? And so I just wanted to point that out. Listen, we're going to take a quick break again, and when we come back, we're going to talk about our final thoughts around this because I'm curious to hear what both of you have to say. And so we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of This Morning with Soulivity.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity, and I'll go to final thoughts from you, Sheila.
I'm thinking about everything we've talked about today and the hierarchy of wealth, along with the individual embracing abundance and finances. And it doesn't have to do with how much money you have or how much net worth, because I have met and worked with a lot of very rich people, wealthy people who have a lot of money and resources, and their relationship to money and abundance can be equally as off and unhealthy as someone who is living right on the edge. And sometimes people who are living on the edge have even more opportunity to look at it because they're experiencing it. So both of you talked about, being on the edge of that when you were young, and I was too in some ways. And it's important to realize that this is something internal that we can all look at and change, and it's within all of us. And when we change it, we'll change it for everyone.
Thank you, Sheila. Dr. Chanel?
Yes, I want to just think about maybe taking some of the pressure off. So, like you said, Brian, we're all in different phases of our financial journey, and some of us might be struggling, might be in survival mode. And so, think about taking the pressure off to possibly get help. And then also re-examine maybe what value that you can bring to others to create value, because one of the things in the article talks about is the value that you create brings more abundance to you. And then you can seal all of this off with your attitude and disposition for gratitude and thankfulness. So really being conscious and thankful for exactly what you have now, because we have goodness all around us now. And so focusing on that good will expand for more goodness and more abundance. And so making sure that we just seed everything with gratitude.
I love your final thoughts, both of you. Mine comes from this article because I couldn't find, I think it's a perfect way to kind of end today's show. And it reads, "The money problems of your past were never about money. They were simply a reflection of your consciousness. Unlocking the secret energy of money requires only that you change your consciousness you bring to money. Throughout the day, numerous thoughts influence how you make, spend, save, and share money. By replacing thoughts of lack, limitation, and struggle with the ones of abundance, generosity, and ease, you will magnetize money to you. As your mind fills with gratitude and your eyes behold the abundance of the universe everywhere, your financial landscape will automatically mirror the shift in consciousness. Your life, including your financial outlook, will then reveal the beautiful, vibrant, and supportive story that you create." Wow. I thank you, Sharper Center.
Absolutely.
Oh man. Well, listen, while we have a little bit of time, Sheila, you've got your Soul Connection sessions happening. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, Soul Connection session is a session with me that can be a typical spiritual reading where I communicate with the divine on your behalf, or you can come along with me in a personalized meditation. And this empowers you to overcome obstacles or connect deeper with your own soul energy and loved ones. And there is a discount for $44 off if you use the code SOUL23.
Perfect. And Dr. Chanel, you've got some complimentary coaching sessions going on.
Complimentary coaching sessions, especially when we're talking about living a fabricated life that is a facade. We want to help you interrupt that and get to your core central values so that you can be who you really want to be, do, and have the things that you really want.
Well, fantastic. Thank you both for supplying those much needed services to our audience. Listen, I just want to say, remember to follow us on social media We've got a lot of things happening across the platform. Even more things are going to be happening in the spring and summer. So make sure you follow us and join our mailing list by visiting the This Morning Soulivity site now. Also, listen, on behalf of all of us, thank you for listening. We appreciate all of you. We appreciate the comments and the thoughts. If you have specific ideas for any specific show, please go ahead and email us at soulivity@soulivity.com. We would love to hear more about what you think. Listen, ladies, what a fantastic show today, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, right. I'm like smiling from ear to ear to ear to ear. So listen, on behalf of all of us, I want to say thanks for joining us again for this great episode on energetic change and the wealth gap on This Morning with Soulivity. Listen, we really hope that you come back and join us every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern for our live broadcast, or listen at 9 a.m. Pacific Thursday and Fridays on KMET 1490 a.m. for all of you on the West Coast. We've got a fantastic show that's coming up tomorrow that actually features a very special person in my life. Sheila, you know about this, Dr. Sheila. You know. But we're going to be having Melva Thomas Johnson, who just happens to be my mom, who's going to be talking about not feeling heard tomorrow on our show. So please remember to check us out tomorrow on the next episode, because it's going to be really fascinating. I hope she doesn't tell too much business.
You guys are going to have fun tomorrow.
Like, I'm preempting this. I'm like, Mom, don't you talk about my business too much. So anyway, listen, on behalf of all of us here, again, thanks for joining us. Again, we hope that you come back. This is how we do it. These are real conversations that empower you every single day. So until next time, keep on having those same conversations with passion and purpose, and create a really fine, high quality life of your best life today. Talk to you next time, everybody. Bye.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.